What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast. He's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. We are back after a 3-week, 4-week hiatus. Post-draft stuff here for us. We have not broken it down. I know people have been patiently waiting. I've actually had texts from people that have said, hey, are you doing a show anymore? People have reached out in the comments and have said, what are you guys doing? So, we're back. Just had some stuff to do, so we're here. But Scott, my man, how are you?
I'm good. Doing good. How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, no, I'm great. The draft is in the books. It's always bittersweet because I just love it. I don't know. I'm sick in the head. But I've got a tab open right now with 2025 and 2026 draft prospects on it, and I'm just filling it out day by day. But no, I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about this draft, and that's what we're going to do. We're talking 2024 NFL draft, and the Lions did well, really well. And it should be no surprise. We've had 4 drafts now under Brad Holmes. We've talked in detail about the previous 3 and how he's maybe not hit a home run on every single pick. Maybe it's been a base hit or a double. Probably going to be a couple of base hits and doubles here. I love what they did, but let's start at the top. Tyrion Arnold, pick 24. He's on the board. The Lions move up, and you just knew that's what they were doing when they were moving up. When he was there, they made that trade with the Cowboys. I love this pick for so many reasons, but the floor is yours to start. Tyrion Arnold, what's your spin here? How do you feel about him as a player?
Maybe he's a perfect fit for the Lions, but it just seems like the Lions have been fortunate since Brad Holmes has started drafting for them. Like, Penei Sewell should not have been there in 2021. He just shouldn't have been.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of good fortune that has happened with players falling to them. And this particular draft was bizarre with all the offensive players going. And just a nod and a note to the future that next year it's going to be completely different.
Yeah.
The majority of the first, it's going to be flipped. So there's going to be a ton of edge players and corners and defensive players in the early part of next year's draft. But just the idea of 14 picks going, I think it was the first 14 picks they were offensive players. And some of the quarterbacks who went in situations that were a little weird. But still, Tyrion Arnold, available where he was, is just crazy to think about. He was one of the premium players in the entire draft.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, corner is a premium position. Mm-hmm. So to only have to give up what they gave up to go get him just feels like, if we just view it globally, like, all right, you're picking 29th overall, and you found a way to stumble into Tyrion Arnold without giving up anything in the future is crazy.
Yep.
It just feels like another one of those, the NFL is sleeping on Brad Holmes and he's stealing from them.
Yes.
So yep. I think he's a perfect fit. I really like, and this is a nice thing, is I don't think it's mandated that he has to play anywhere in their secondary. He just needs to play somewhere, and he will, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know whether that's and the versatility of lining him up either outside or inside or whatever it is. He's just a perfect fit. The way he plays in coverage, his mentality, he'll come up and tackle, all that stuff. There's nothing not to like about him as a player. What do you think?
Dude, I was ecstatic. I loved the move up to get him, because we talked about this pre-show, and I talked about this on WJR when we were doing the live draft show. And like the whole thing, I'm like, you have a future number one corner with so much uncertainty around, going into this offseason of Cam Sutton. And then obviously they move on from him. And then Carlton Davis, you bring him in. He's on a 1-year deal. You now bring in, to me, the 14th best player in the draft, the number one corner in the draft. You got him at pick 24. You gave up a third round pick that you got in a previous deal with the TJ Hawkinson move. So like, okay, you got rid of Hawkinson to get Tyrion Arnold. Like that makes your team better because you have Sam Laporta. They're checking so many boxes. And like, okay, he ran a 4.5 big deal. His 3-cone drill was a 6.65 at the Alabama Pro Day. Like this guy's been a known athlete through high school. He averaged 8.8 and 4 rebounds a game. His PR in the 200-meter dash was 23.92 seconds. So clearly there's some build-up speed there. And you mentioned the physicality for him on the perimeter. Like that's an important part that the NFL is going to. Perimeter defenders that can tackle. Tyrion Arnold did it better than any corner in the draft outside of maybe one or two guys. Like he's a stud. I
mean, maybe the player they took in round 2 might have tackled a little better than him. But that's the point. If you're going to play corner for the Lions, you better tackle. And Arnold does. He had no issues tackling in the SEC. He's,
and he jumped routes. He jumped routes too. Like, okay, he wasn't always where he needed to be on a vertical route, but on out routes and corner routes, he was in perfect position almost every single time. He can lock up tight ends, no problem. Slot receivers, really no problem. Outside receivers, no problem. Like he's just different too. Like, and I don't think a lot of fans have been talking about this. Like something about him feels different. And it's the way he carries himself, the way he talks, like he's got an energy about him and he seems determined to be great. And
so you can see through. It's easy to see through when a person or a player, whatever it is manufacturing confidence or swagger or whatever you want to call it. And there's nothing for him to manufacture. He just has it.
He's a dude.
Right? So I would be surprised if he, year one is always a tough transition. It just is. But with what they have already there, I referred to it as a bit of a soft landing spot for both of the corners that they took early. But that doesn't mean they can't play themselves into a position where they're playing a lot.
Right.
Who knows? Right. But both of these guys, I think, are legit. I keep talking about the guy in round 2, but we'll get to him. He is a legit dude. He is. He plays with that confidence. He plays under control. I would say that when it comes to watching players, I know we've talked about this in the past, but I would rather have a guy who runs 4.5 but doesn't guess much, as opposed to a guy who runs 4.4 and does a good bit of guessing. I think the 4.5 guy is going to be in position a lot more than the 4.4 guy. So just a little bit of like, does it matter that what they run in the 40? Yeah, it matters. But 4.5 is plenty fast enough for a player who plays like Tyrion Arnold. Is he going to have issues with, due to would you want him playing press against Tyreek Hill with no safety help? No. But I don't know if I want any corner playing that way. You know what I mean? So I don't know that it matters much. But great fit. It's just the awareness of the Lions to have already set some of this stuff, because we're hearing a little bit about there was no expectation of them thinking that Arnold would be there. It was more, I think they were going to go up for a guy like Darius Robinson. Mm-hmm. So some of the trade stuff was already in place.
Yep.
Right. So you just love to hear that. Like, they were going to be aggressive. The window is now. They're going to go get, players that help them. Arnold is, I would expect he has a fairly good role in year one, but he's got to play to that level. And if he does, man, he's one of the, to me, he's one of the most, he'll be a very important piece going forward, but it's the Lions got more value out of their first round pick than I think a lot of teams did. And they started the night picking 29th overall. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like I almost think about that like you sat down at a blackjack table and you decided to throw a bunch of money on the table and you got dealt blackjack. Hey, good job.
That's me every time.
Yeah, just like, it's almost like a no-brainer what they did.
Yeah.
And if they would have just sat back and said, we'll just take whoever falls to us, knowing that this was the other possibility, we'd all be like, what are you doing? Go get that guy.
Yeah.
So huge,
No,
it was a huge deal, a huge trade. It was very surprising. Super cool that it was in Detroit. Super cool that he was here to talk to the fans. It was just a spectacle. It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. It's just like it's going to be a great story, and to see how it all unfolds. If he's a great player, to play that back on the opening night of the draft, and depending on how the success goes for him down the line here over the next 10 to 12 years, whatever the case is. So it's great. But the next pick, Andis Rakstraw, the corner out of Missouri, pick 61. I think this is a great pick. Again, another player that I would say is tremendous value. He was my 41st ranked player, my 7th ranked corner, and they got him at 61. And it's just another draft where Brad Holmes on day 2 of the draft gets a little bit of luck, and gets a guy to fall right into his lap. But I think the pairing of Arnold and Rakstraw with Brian Branch, Amik Robertson, and these guys, it's going to be so much fun. It is going to be so much fun to watch these guys develop. And oddly enough, I think Rakstraw is very comparable to Emmanuel Mosley as a player. And the fact that he's going to get to learn from him, I think just does wonders for Rakstraw and his development.
Yeah, for sure. And the same thing, soft landing, no pressure to come in and have to perform, at a high level. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that they can't, or there's not that opportunity there for them to do that. But yeah, he can sit back a touch and kind of figure out the NFL game. But the nice thing there is, if Arnold is an outside corner, Rakstraw may be a slot corner for you in the future, right?
Started rookie minicamp there.
So, you know what I mean? Like that allows Brian Branch to roll into a more traditional safety role, or maybe as a robber kind of a player. They're suddenly loaded in the cornerback room where, 6 months ago, 4 months ago, whatever it was, it didn't look that way. If anything, I think they were struggling just to get bodies on the field. And it reminds me a little bit of when Iserman took over the Red Wings job, and it was like 2 weeks before the draft. And on draft night, he just says, Kenny Howland, I reject your idea of what you think about defensemen. Right. So with the 6th pick in this draft, we're going to take Moritz Seider.
Yeah. And he was like, who?
Yeah. And it's like, all right, he's very much telling everybody he didn't like at all what they had, with their defenders. But Holmes, it's very interesting that they took this approach to completely overhaul the defensive back room in a year. You brought in 4 new corners in a year. Right, in one offseason. You traded for Carlton Davis, Amik Robertson from Vegas, you signed as a free agent, and now the 2 draft picks, and all of a sudden they're kind of loaded there. Yep. So, it is one way to get your pass rush home. Generally speaking, you can get to the quarterback quicker with edge players and interior defenders, which means you don't have to cover as long, or you can cover a little longer, which allows pressure to get home.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a great thing. So, from a value standpoint, from a versatility standpoint, all that stuff, I think going into the future, it looks good. The defensive back room looks really good. Brian Branch, I think it allows him to be a little more specific with what they're going to ask him to do, which is, I hope, a good thing, meaning let him do a lot of things, right?
Yeah.
Blitzing, all that stuff. It's just, when I think about the secondary at this point, it's the 2 rookies and Carlton Davis and Robertson, and then you've got Branch and Kirby Joseph and Melifonwu, and it's like, it's pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty good. And if that's kind of what we all viewed the weakness of that team was, late in the season and going into the playoffs, they've really flipped things, and it's the awareness of Brad Holmes and company to do that, it's impressive.
It really is. And we'll get back into the draft stuff, but just talking about Arnold and Rakstraw, kind of back-to-back picks here as 1st and 2nd round guys, I wanted to go into just this segment real quick of just the Lions having a long-term plan at corner, which is something that I don't know if we've ever had that. At least in my life, we've never had it. And we had some solid years with Darius Slay and all that stuff, but there was still a lot of uncertainty with that entire group, whether it be in the back end or somebody opposite of Slay, vice versa, whatever. Now you have a long-term plan because Carlton Davis is due for a contract extension, and I would assume probably only going to play this year with Detroit. Maybe he comes back and he gets a 2 to 3 year deal, like a Cam Sutton type deal. We'll see what happens. But regardless, long-term, over the next 4 to 5 years, where you're giving all this money to Penei Sewell and Jared Goff, and we'll get into the Goff extension to close out the show. St. Brown, you're going to have to pay Hutch, all these guys. You now have the long-term plan here and the stability in the hopes that these guys are going to develop into the number 1 and number 2 corners that you think they're going to be. And as you mentioned, you have so much depth at safety and flexibility and versatility with Branch and Joseph and Melifonwu and all this stuff. There's going to be different packages. And I think finally the true nickel and dime packages that they wanted to run last year, they can now run. But it kind of evaporated week 1 because of the Gardner Johnson injury. So now they can really get after it. And we're really not talking about Emmanuel Mosley. What's he going to do this year? He could still have a presence. So like they're just so deep. They're so deep. And I love this long-term plan, and you've kind of hit it. So I just wanted to kind of put a bow on that long-term plan.
Well, and then the other thing, too, is if let's say Carlton Davis plays to a reasonably high level and leaves in free agency, you're going to get a comp pick for him.
Yep. Oh, third-round comp pick? Oh. Huh.
Okay. So you just paid the price of
Tyrion Arnold.
Yes, but also the player that you took in round 4 this year.
Yeah.
You gave up a future third for him.
Yep.
There's a bunch of ways you can get those picks back. So, yeah. So, I mean, what'd you think of like the middle of the draft?
Yeah. Well, and I was going to get into that 4th round. Giovani Manu, offensive tackle out of British Columbia, was fortunate enough right after he was selected to where my son's travel baseball day was canceled because of rain and all that stuff. So I was able to sit and break down 2 games of Giovani Manu. And I'll tell you what, I know he was playing against guys that look like me out there, but at the same time, 6'8", 350 pounds. You can tell that this guy's a former athlete, just an athlete, a former basketball player.
Yeah.
And the way he can transfer his weight and the flexibility within his lower half with his post foot and his set foot, it's the ingredients are there. And Hank Fraley does have his work cut out for him. Because, I mean, to get him to be a high-quality player, it's going to probably take at least 2 years. But the hope is that this guy could play either left or right tackle. Worst-case scenario, he's your probably future right guard or left guard. And you just have something here with this guy. And I think it's very encouraging that they went this route, a little bit off the grid, as you would say. But I like the move. And for a guy in Brad Holmes that is really, as we mentioned, hit on so many picks, I'm fine with him rolling the dice in the 4th round of his 4th draft on a guy from Canada who's this mammoth human. And the hope is that he develops. That's the hope.
I mean, that's so he needs to develop, but like you said, he's a shade under 6'8", whatever he is, 6'7.5",
whatever. Yeah,
350 plus pounds. I mean, there's not very many people on the planet like that who can move.
Mm-hmm.
And he can bend and all that stuff. So it's I don't think that so I'm curious to hear what you think. But I know after the draft there was a little bit of talk about him playing right guard, and to me that was like, I don't know that that's his long-term position, but I think in the short term, to get he played the left side, so to get him transitioning to the right side of the ball, and your kick foot and your post foot are different. They just are. So you have to figure some of that stuff out, and I think it's easier to do that in year 1 if you just ask him to take guard reps, and tackle reps, right? But I don't think that there's I don't think that there's any reasonable way to view them as thinking he's limited to playing guard only. Like I don't think that's a thing. I think that they're going to let his play and his development sort of track that out. But I would expect Decker to sign a short extension here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when, but he has a void year next year.
Yeah.
So, but if you really don't need this guy for 2 years, and I know it's a big if he does develop and starts as a right tackle for you with Penei Sewell kicking over and playing left tackle, it is incredible that you literally gave up what was essentially a future third round pick, you know what I mean, in round 4 of the 2024 draft for a guy who might start for you for a while as a right tackle. If that's what you've done, it is just incredible value. It really is. Now, there is work to do, but Hank Fraley's a really good coach. Manu can move. Yeah, he can move. So I don't think you're looking at a big, huge, stiff dude. He can move. So we'll see. And it's gonna be. I don't think it's. We shouldn't view this in short term segments. I think it's. What does it look like? How does he look like halfway through year one? What does it look like at the end of year one? And then what does he look like going into training camp next year? Because that to me is the real, give him a full year of development and see what he looks like. But,
and I'll say that
I love the gamble on it. I just,
yeah. And I'll say this to kind of just put, the cherry on top for me on him is last year they took Colby Sorsdale out of William and Mary, and I watched him after they selected him, and I liked his tape, didn't love his tape. I like Giovani Manu's tape a lot more than I like Colby Sorsdale's tape, and I get it, level of competition, but I just, seeing Sorsdale year one, I think there's going to be a little bit more promise with Manu than we saw with Sorsdale. And again, I'm not bashing him. I think he can be a starter down the road at some point. Maybe it's more of a spot starter. Maybe he's more of a swing tackle, where Manu is going to probably be eventually a permanent starter. Maybe he's only, maybe he'll be 25 at that point, but either way, so be it. If he starts for 10 years for you at 25.
How many tackles did we see go in round one?
Right.
So, I mean, there's just such a premium on that position. It just is.
Yeah.
The idea that you swung for the fences in round 4 and gave up future capital, cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's got to work out, right? But I think we both kind of see what it could look like, right?
Yep.
Which is super intriguing. What do you think of Vaki from Utah?
We knew he was coming here, right? He had been so heavily linked to him prior to the draft. It was like when they selected him, I go, yep, of course. And I love it because, and I'm going to talk about this in the Jared Goff extension segment, but Detroit is not a destination city. We can all agree it's not a destination place. For us, it is because we grew up here. But for most, it's not. It's not Miami. It's not LA. Yeah. But Detroit, the football team, it's becoming an opportunity city. And Vaki is going to get an opportunity to either play offense, defense, both, and most importantly, special teams. And Detroit is one of the, I don't want to say the few teams, but one of the teams in the NFL that seems to really value those special team guys. It's so bizarre to watch him on defense, playing as a buzz defender or in the box, scraping over the top with great range, and then go to the offense and take it 60 yards to the house. It
is crazy to see how many forced missed tackles it is just, it's nuts.
Yeah.
To watch him run with the ball. I don't think if I was gambling, I'd put a lot of money that he will never play on the defensive side of the ball for them. I think he is a special teams. I think with the new return rules, his value is huge in the return game.
Yep.
And just as the third string running back with upside.
Yep. And I think if he did play defense, I think it would be in some type of big nickel linebacker type role or something. Yeah. It wouldn't be he's the starting strong safety week 1, right? No, he would play in a big nickel role down in the box, covering the alley, But you're right. He'd play third down on as a running back and certainly special teams and probably more as a fullback leading the way, which is clearly a position they've been trying to identify. But injuries and just kind of the lack of development from Malcolm Rodriguez in that position has kind of limited that. But now they get a potential guy that can truly play it at a really high level. And if you think about what the 49ers do, Kyle Juszczyk, not overly big, but very versatile. Vaki is going to be very versatile in this offense and in his special teams. So I loved that deal. And he is. And it's tough to say this with a straight face, so I'm not going to try to, but there's an element of it that is true, is he is a weapon on offense. And he was at Utah when they gave him opportunities. The game logs are silly. Yeah. He's very different. Again, I know it's limited, but the way he runs with the ball in his hands is different. We should have known he was going to be a Lion when he, at his pro day or whatever workout, they put him through, I think it was 4 different positional workouts he went through. Yep. So he went through defensive back, running back, receiver, and then special teams workouts. And it's like, that just, he's going to, pencil, write it in pen. He's a Lion, right? So, but yeah, I mean, it's just, there's value in what he does. What is he going to be? I don't know. I do think that, I think he will beat Craig Reynolds. Maybe not in year 1, but pretty soon he will be their third running back. Yeah, I think he will be very involved in the return game immediately. There's value in all that stuff. So, what it felt like to me, this is silly, but it did feel like it, is that Brad Holmes is so good at this shit that he took like a couple round vacation, if that makes any sense at all. Hey, this shit's so easy. In rounds 4 and 5, or 3 and 4, whatever it was, or 4 and 5, I'm just going to mail it in, right? Whatever. But once we got to round 6, he just got back to work. Yeah. It just crushed a couple picks. But that's kind of what it felt like. I mean, like, it's obviously how much value is there in a backup running back and a special teams sort of convert. There's value, but obviously they like him as a player with whatever they envision. But, it's just interesting thinking about what they do in rounds 1 and 2, and then giving up, and making the gamble on Manu. And then Vaki comes in as a backup kind of special teams player. And then, then round 6 comes and it's like, wow. What do you think of the 2 dudes they took in round 6? Because to me, it was like, that is the value of the draft. Both those guys. I agree. I mean, Wingo was a guy that caught my eye a couple times. I didn't watch him in depth, but just so much power and versatility. And he's the type of guy they value, right? Like high character, versatile, strong run defender on the defensive line. And that's what Wingo is. And he's the perfect complement to what they already have on the defensive line, but he's perfect for the development behind DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil. Yep. And he's a high character dude. Everybody to LSU praised him. That's why he wore the number 18. Rakstraw had a bunch of positives to talk about with him. Wingo had a lot of positives to talk about Rakstraw because they were teammates at Missouri. So,
dude, I want people to know the story about him, his injury, and him rehabbing all that time.
I don't think they do
for the bowl game. Like, that's a big deal.
Yeah,
it's a big deal, right? I mean, it's in an era where a lot of players are not playing their bowl games. This kid was like, "No, I'm coming back for that bowl game."
Yeah, and
I mean, it matters. And with him, he's an explosive interior rusher with the ability to play on the edge. So, I love the idea of him playing on the edge at times, in like NASCAR packages where, it's 3rd and long and you're trying to create a little bit of pressure inside with some quickness. That kind of stuff. I think he gives them versatility that almost nobody else on the roster has. Yep. I don't know if that, I don't even want to say he's redundant with Pascal, because I feel like there is a little bit of that, but they're different guys, right?
Yep.
So he's different than Pascal is different than Onzarike, right? So you've got a bunch of different body types and a bunch of different stuff, but in the end, they're all fiery. They're all high character guys who I mean, it's round 6, and
right.
I don't know how he's there.
And that's what they did with the guard that they took in the 6th round. I don't know how he was there. I mean, he's given up 1 sack in 3 seasons, 7 total pressures, can move, get out in space. He can pull. You get him at pick 210, Christian Mahogany. I think that's how you say his last name,
yeah.
Mahogany. Yeah. That's how I say it. I don't know if I say it wrong or right, but his Shrine Bowl kid, there must have been some medical
medical that caused him to slide a little bit, but still, you're looking at, I mean, all we're doing is praising Brad Holmes here, which is whatever. You're looking at, I think, a player who could potentially start for you in year 1.
Mm-hmm. He was your favorite pick of the draft, wasn't he?
Yeah.
It feels like we've been texting on and off, and it feels like that is your guy right now.
Well, it's just, I think he if he goes in round 3 at some point, okay, cool. He's a plug and play kind of player.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know what the injury stuff is, so it's hard to gauge some of that stuff. But I just, Boston College runs a lot of power concepts, and all I know is when they needed yards in short yardage stuff, or when they really needed something, they ran behind him, or they pulled him and they got him out in front of stuff. He's athletic for a huge dude. I love the way Brad Holmes referred to him as having a little bit of dirtbag in him.
Yeah,
which is, if you just think about it from an O-line standpoint, that's like the highest compliment you could offer somebody
ever,
right?
Ever,
yeah. So, I mean, I think that he is looking at a scenario with this offensive line. Zeitler's going to play right guard, and Ragnow's going to start at center. But he's been banged up, and some of the injuries are kind of piling up. Wouldn't stun me at all if Ragnow missed a game. If Glasgow had to play center, wouldn't stun me at all if Mahogany was their left guard starter.
Completely agree.
In year 1, and you got him in the 6th round. So, I was following. It was my wife and I were down there for that Saturday, and we saw them trade up for Manu, and saw them trade up. And there's some hilarious stories. I'm not going to tell them. We saw him trade up for Manu and Vaki, and then we left. And then I listening to it on the way home, and I'm like, they got a who in the 6th round? Are you serious? So yeah. To me that one feels like more value than should have been there in round 6. But, it was an interesting draft. I think they did a good job. They've improved their team. They improved the back end of their roster significantly. And that's really all you can ask for. Again, they're picking 29th, and I think you did a good job of improving a lot of positions, on that roster.
Yeah, I agree. And it's been a very busy offseason for Brad Holmes, but I think he's knocked it out of the park. Whether it was moving on from Cam Sutton, which I know is not a easy decision to do, but considering the circumstances, you had to do what you have to do. You lost players like Josh Reynolds and Jonah Jackson, but you brought in Kevin Zietler, Carlton Davis, Marcus Davenport, Robertson, so many really high-level football players. And then you had a terrific draft, it feels like, on paper. And you have a lot of overlapping talent and a lot of positions at corner, but you're extending players and you have foundational pieces at premier positions. Receiver with St. Brown, quarterback with Jared Goff, which we're about to talk about real quick. Panay Sewell at offensive tackle. You have all this corner depth. Like, the future looks bright for quite some time. And we all talk about windows for certain teams, whether it's the Buffalo Bills or the Chiefs or the Rams or whoever. We kind of have a window here in Detroit, and it doesn't feel like it's closing anytime soon. Whether you're a hater, a lover of the team, whatever it is, just get used to that window being open and the Lions coming right through that window and probably ripping your face off, because this is what this team does. They are just a fun football team to cover. I'm so glad we get to do this show every week, and I can't wait to see what happens. And a lot of it a lot of it stems from this guy right here, Jared Goff, the quarterback. I mean, talk about a guy that like when we traded Stafford for him, I still remember where I was. I remember how I felt. I felt the door just kind of close of that chapter of Stafford and the thought of like, okay, here comes Jared Goff. Maybe he can do something, but I'm not going to get my hopes up because let's be honest, he looks like a shell of himself from where he was 2 to 3 years ago and all this stuff. And it felt like the media ripped him apart, whether you're a part of the national media or smaller media. And everybody felt like he was done. The Lions were this laughing stock. I've always been a laughing stock. And they go 3-13-1. They didn't do shit the second year to start the season. And then all of a sudden, over the last 27 games, he's 20-7. They have a division title. He's won 2 playoff games, and every single stadium in this city chants his name. Like, this dude has taken over the city. He took over this football team, and he rejuvenated his career. And he deserves every bit of a 4-year, $212 million deal.
He deserves every penny he's got coming to him. It's interesting because when they did make that trade, there was just a little bit of unknown with him, simply because of what McVay does to really control, or what he did. I don't know that he's this way anymore, but with Goff, he refused to allow Goff to grow up. This was when they first started allowing the coaches to talk into the helmets of the quarterbacks. So, you didn't allow the quarterback to learn all that much because you did everything for him, right? So when that trade was made, one of the things I did think was there is some relative unknown. I remember I was doing a show at Woodward Sports at the time, and it was Sean Belizean and I talking about it, and just kind of this recognition of there is some unknown. We don't know. Do we think that? Did I think he was going to turn into this? No, I'll completely own that. But there was an element of if he can figure out, because he was a really good prospect coming out. He just went to a bad place in year one with Kevin Fisher, that was destined for failure. And then McVay refusing to really structure his offense and being so rigid with what they did, and kind of then throwing the blame on the Goff. It was like, but Goff has really figured it out, and he has grown up as a player, and there's a lot of things that he does well. So he deserves it all.
Yeah.
They were, I don't even think this is a hyperbolic thing to say, but there were two or three, whatever you want to look at it, 2 or 3 plays away from being in the Super Bowl last year. And maybe even one. If the ball doesn't bounce off of Vildor's face and IU catches it down there, I don't think the 49ers come back and win that game. Right? If Josh Reynolds catches
one pass,
right? That game is a different thing. You're in the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Goff has definitely won this city over. I think there's still going to be detractors. There's still going to be this element of, and this is where I was when the trade first happened, was he's never going to be a guy that wins you. He's never going to be a player who wins you a huge game by himself.
Right.
Right. And I think there's still a perspective of that out there where, to me, I think we got to just let all that stuff go. He's a really good quarterback. Does he have flaws? Yeah. But, most quarterbacks do. He has grown into a very competent, high-level player. Pressure is still... I think pressure is one of those things that's always going to be a problem for him.
Yeah.
But the offensive line does a good enough job keeping him upright where, there's other quarterbacks that you might want,
right.
But as for this city, for where they are right now, Goff is fine. And it's almost it'd be irresponsible not to extend him, right? Just he's earned it. And, I think the locker room loves him. I love that they extended him a year early. They did the same thing with St. Brown, the same thing with Sewell. So, it looks like a ton of money right now, but in a year or two, it's not. It's not going to look like that much money. So, I think we're still waiting for some of the specific details to come in on his contract. I don't know exactly when there's an out. My assumption is it is after the third year of the extension, so that would be 4 years from now.
Yep.
But, looking at their offense and just seeing what they've done for the last 2 years, there's no reason to not keep that going. Their offense has been pretty electric.
Yeah.
So,
the details on his contract: 4 years, $212 million extension, $73 million signing bonus, $125 million over the first 2 years, $165 million over the first 3 years, and 2028, which is the fourth and final year of the deal, is actually an option year, and that's a $57 million deal. So by 2028, quarterbacks will probably be in that ballpark of $55 to $60 million, if not more, by that point in time. So he'll be at market value, if not below market value. And hopefully by that point, the Lions have more playoff wins, more division titles, and potentially a Super Bowl or two, hopefully, with the way it works. But I'm so glad that you mentioned the Rams stuff of how McVay limited Goff from growing as a quarterback and as a player. And when you think about really his success, he was successful because they had a really strong running game. Todd Gurley was in the prime of his career, and when Todd Gurley fell off, they couldn't run the football to save their life. And he comes to Detroit, and what do? For year 2 or whatever, they get Jamal, or first year, second year, whatever it is, they bring in Jamal Williams. They run him. He breaks the franchise record for single season touchdowns. It was 17 or 18. They draft Jahmyr Gibbs. They bring in David Montgomery. They have one of the best rushing attacks in football. And all of a sudden you have a very high level quarterback. Like, running the football matters. Taking a running back in the draft seems to matter. Developing your offensive line and building it up, it matters. Yeah. And building your passing attack off of timing matters. And most importantly, understanding your players and your talent. And the Lions with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have done that. Ben Johnson, he's done that. They have done that with Jared Goff, and they've shown it. And that's why this has become a place of opportunity. Maybe it's not a destination, but it's a place of opportunity. And I love the deal. I love that he's here long term. I love that while we have Hendon Hooker, it's great to have that kind of insurance, but the future is very bright in Detroit. I love this deal. I love what we've done. I love the draft. This whole thing, we're a better football team. This is the same thing that we had last year. We knocked Jahmyr Gibbs in the first, Jack Campbell in the first. We reached. The analytical crowd didn't like it, but we got good football players, and we continue to draft good football players and get better as a football team.
Yeah, and I would urge, the whole city of Detroit thing, I would urge people to rewatch night 1 of the draft and to listen to Tyrion Arnold's family's reaction when it was Detroit on the phone.
Yeah. It
matters. There was a time, and it's not that long ago, that would have been like, it's Detroit.
Yeah.
Not anymore. So that kind of stuff matters. And, winning draws talent. So, the idea of people, players being excited to come here is a very real thing. It is. People, I'm sure, would love to play for Dan Campbell as opposed to some of the other coaches in the NFL. But, big picture for me is they were a really good team going into the draft, and they're a better team coming out of the draft. And yes, you gave up a 2025 third-round pick, but you can easily get that pick back. There's a bunch of ways to do all that stuff. There's no concern on my end for any of that stuff. I mean, if you would have told me that the Lions gave up a future, 2025 second to move up 10 spots to take Tyrion Arnold, I would have said, okay, right? He fits like a glove here.
Yeah.
That didn't have to happen, but he's here. So I'm really interested to see what training camp is going to look like and just how cutthroat competitive that's going to be.
Yeah.
In a good way.
Yeah.
The Lions are a problem.
Yeah, no, it's true. And it's funny. If you look back, and I think I've been thinking about it, I'm like, I wonder what we talked about during going into the draft, like the episodes that we did leading up, because I know we did the great in-depth offensive tackle, interior offensive line stuff, but I think about it and I'm like, I don't think we ever really thought of Tyrion Arnold as a legit option, because we thought by pick 15, 16, he's off the board. And sure enough, we got him. So it's just the luck of the draw and the way this has all been going. It's been great. It's awesome. You're right. The competitiveness in training camp is going to be off the charts. It's going to be insanity. And this is good football team, man. Good football team with good football players. The right people in place. I mean, it's still weird. It's still bizarre. I know. I'm going to hyperventilate over here.
It feels so strange to be talking so positively about them. I mean, there's always the chance that some of this stuff doesn't work. I mean, that's how it works.
Mm-hmm.
But just from a thought, thinking it out standpoint, looking at, all right, your defensive back play last year was poor, and you brought in Carlton Davis, but there's no guarantees he's here long term. You need help, and boom. I would guess, and this is the last thing I'll say. I could go on forever. I would guess that the Lions got the number 1 and 2 cornerbacks on their draft board in this draft.
100%.
It's incredible.
Yep. The only one I think they may not have gotten was Cooper DeJean, and that's fine. No big deal.
Sure.
I'm
good with it.
It's crazy. But, this was great. This was our 2024 NFL Draft Recap show, the Jared Goff Extension show. You guys can rate, review, and subscribe to the Detroit Lions podcast on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, you can follow us on Twitter or X at Russ NFL Draft and at Bischoff_Scott. Scott, my man, you got anything else for us?
Nope. I've talked enough. We're good.
Yep, I'm with you. So he's Scott Bischoff. I'm Russ Brown. This is Bischoff and Brown right here on the Detroit Lions podcast.